On today's Tech Help for Churches, 7 things to consider when you're thinking about using a proprietary content management system. Hi everyone and welcome again to Tech Help for Churches. My name is Paul Allen Clifford and I'm your host today, as I am every day. And I thought, well, every week rather, for this particular show. I do shows like this 5 days a week. On Tuesdays I do a screencast show. On Wednesdays I do a show called Eternity Changers. On Thursdays I do a show called Technobabble that's all about video production and graphic design. And Friday I answer your questions. So, with that in mind, I'd love for you to join the conversation by heading over to trinitydigitalmedia.com/contact. There you can find all my contact information, including my phone number, 1-877-POD-ECHO, 1-877-763-3246, or my email address, which is paul@trinitydigitalmedia.com. You can leave a comment on that post if you'd prefer. Or if you're more of a Twitter person, well, since I did literally write the book on Twitter for churches, you might guess that I have a Twitter account. Paul Allen Cliff, PaulAlanclif, which, by the way, shortest possible way to spell those 3 names. And there's no E in there, if that helps you remember how to spell my Allen, which I know is non-standard. So, I would like to first off remind you that my pastor's book, What Life Are You Waiting For?, is available right now. It launched just this past week, and it's forwarded by Bill Hybels, printed by Tyndale House, and available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You'll probably even see it in your local Christian bookstore. It's going to be a big deal, and I just really think it would be great if you would pick up a copy, because if you have dreams, or if you think that you're supposed to just be nice and kind and not really impact anything except in very small ways, this really is the book for you. It's all about just taking the next step and going where your calling is taking you, as opposed to just being afraid and being uncertain and being timid. So head over to trinitydigitalmedia.com/whatlifebook and order your copy. The graphic says pre-order. Well, it's a little old, so I really want to encourage you to order a copy on Kindle if you want, or in paperback. Either way, it's available. Also, I want to thank the viewers like you who are making this show possible by heading over to patreon.com/PaulAllenCliff. For as little as $1 a month, we can join together as a community and help make shows like this one possible. So thank you for doing just that. So, I've noticed a trend recently. I've noticed that there are a lot of churches that are, well, in the circles that I run in, that are saying, hey, we're not happy with who we're with. We're with Clover, we're with E-zekiel, we're with webhost through the denomination, and for whatever reason, whoever we're with, they're just not necessarily satisfying our needs from a web standpoint. So who should we go with? And I'm seeing a lot of people respond back, hey, you should go with this proprietary content management system. Now, substitute proprietary content management system for several different companies. It could be Webs, it could be Weebly, it could be SquareSpace, it could be E-zekiel, it could be Clover, it could be any of these companies. And while they're fine for some uses, I do want you to consider some things. there are 7 things that I've created in this list that I think will help you as you're figuring out which way to go, because there are some gotchas with going with a proprietary system, some things that can cause you problems, some things that could come back to bite you, and some things that frankly you just don't need. So let's at least consider these 7 things before we decide to go with one of these, because I know that there are quite a lot of churches out there that have to clean up the mess of going with something proprietary when they outgrow it, or when the company's policies change, or when they just get tired of something about it. So, number one, in any website, unless it's just a single page, and then even in that case, it still should be the case that content should be separate from design. Now, if you're not into web design, you might not know what I mean by that. Imagine that you have a book, and that book can be formatted just about any way that you can imagine, but you can put the same information in it. So you might notice that Bibles tend to have very thin pages. You might notice that they tend to be 2-column formatting for the text, leather bound, hard bound, all these things, but the information can be absolutely the same. It could be that you have, let's say, an NIV printed the same year, where one is paperback, one is hardback, one is leather, one is a more cardboardy kind of cover, one is cloth. So that's how it's designed, but that doesn't impact the information. Also, occasionally you'll run into a Bible where it's a single column of information. All the verses are just in a single column. Maybe it has wider margins, maybe it has narrower margins. But an NIV version of the Bible, as long as it's the same edition, has the same information, no matter how it's designed. Likewise, websites you can have the same information, but have it look totally differently based on the design. So you want those to be separate, even though technically you don't have to do it that way. You want them to be separate so that if you change the design, you don't have to copy and paste hundreds of pages of information from one to the other. It's kind of it's a bit of an issue when you run into something like that. So content and design should be separate. It should be easy to change the design or easy to remove the content without affecting the other one. And I've seen in some of these systems where that's not the case. So make sure content and design are separate. Next, you should be able to easily export the data. The problem with these proprietary systems is, while it tends to be easy to get your data in, it also tends to be difficult to get that data out. Now, there are exceptions. For example, I have a generally positive outlook towards SquareSpace, which is a proprietary system, but they allow you to both import and export data very easily. So that's good. When you're looking, see not only if you can get your data in, but if you change your mind, or 2 years down the road, you're just such a rockin' congregation that you're hitting their servers too hard and they ask you to leave, can you get your data out easily? Or do you have to have people spend weeks and weeks copying and pasting? So export should be easy as well. Number 3, design should be what I call lockable. What do I mean by that? I don't want it to be possible for the children's minister to decide to change the children's site to something fun and festive and inadvertently change the entire website that way. I don't want them to be able to mess with the design too much. The design should be fairly constant. Once you make the design, it shouldn't be the case that people are changing it left, right, and center. They are just adding new content. So I guess this falls in line with what really bugs me about these kinds of systems is they tend to be easier to design, but people think, oh, that's what makes it easy, is it's easy to design. No. Design shouldn't be changed on a whim, shouldn't be changed all the time. It should be fairly constant for long periods of time. 6 months, a year, 5 years. The design should be fairly constant. Think about it in light of a car. If you're driving a car, it will move from point A to point B, and you can change where you're going at any time. But it's kind of difficult to change the look of your car. And that's fine. You don't need the look to change every 5 minutes. You don't need all the tweakability. So you don't want people messing with the design every time they go to add something to the website. You just want them to add something to the website. So that should be lockable. It should be the case that only certain people can change the design, and then only infrequently. Next, there shouldn't be page limits. I've seen this a lot. I did a little research last night as I was prepping for this topic, and I noticed that some of the systems, they said, oh yeah, it's only $3.75 a month, $3.75. That sounds like a good deal until you notice that they'll only let you have 20 pages. Well, let's stop and let's think about that. Homepage, about page, youth ministry, children's ministry, Sunday school, singles ministry. You got 6 right there. You're just off the top of my head. The music ministry wants to do something. Maybe your pastor wants a welcome page. Maybe you want a page for podcasts. We're getting to 8. And then you have a page for a calendar. 10. Right there. You've got 10 pages off the bat. Now you add in a new page for every series, and 10 months, a year from now, you are out of pages. And you can't keep an archive because you're out of pages. So I don't think that you should be satisfied with the limit of only a few pages. I think what you want is you want the ability to get an infinite number of pages. Because as time goes by, you will be adding things, and you don't want to get rid of an archive like you're trying to hide the past. That doesn't make any sense either. So just the idea that it would be limited to a small number, that should be a non-starter for you. Next, it should have a responsive design. I've talked in previous episodes about responsive design. Basically, the idea behind responsive design is that no matter what device you look at it on, it looks good and it looks like it was designed for that device. So if you're looking at it on an older iPhone before the Retina display, it should look good. If you look at it on an Nexus 7, it should look good. If you look at it on a 4K display, it should look good. No matter how you look at it, it should look good. So if that's not part of the process, then don't go there. And by the way, that goes for when you're having a web page designed to use with, like a theme designed to use with WordPress or Joomla or Drupal or some of these other content management systems. Make sure it's responsive. That's very important nowadays. More and more people are using their phones and tablets to access the internet, so you've got to be thinking of them. I've heard there are some sites where up to 50% of their page views come from mobile devices like phones and tablets. So really keep that in mind as you're thinking about this. Next, if it costs more, it should provide something more. So when I was looking at these, I noticed that a lot of them cost more. One of the proprietary systems that I looked at, not naming any names, but it's directed at churches, and I have mentioned their name before. Their entry-level system cost what some of the other systems, advanced, most expensive system cost. So if you're paying $20 a month for one of these and you don't have a ton of traffic, you're probably paying too much. I just think that seems obvious to me, that my web hosting, which is a little on the pricey side, is less than that. So I just want to share that piece of the puzzle, that you've got to keep it in mind. I will say that, as I said, I'm a kind of a fan of Squarespace. This isn't an ad for them. I don't have a relationship with them, although I'm not against it because generally I've heard very good things about them. They have reliability as an extra feature. So while there is an additional cost, if for some reason you get hit by an unexpected surge in traffic, your server isn't going to go down. That's worth something. So check that. If you're paying extra, you should get something extra. And the ability to tweak the design all the time should not be the something extra that you pay for, because really you don't want people tweaking the design all the time. And finally, number 7, what I want you to do is I want you to compare business targeted services with church targeted services and see which you need. Because I've noticed that the business targeted ones counterintuitively tend to be less expensive. So if you are thinking, oh yeah, no problem, I'll just get one of these, and I'm only paying $100 a month. Yeah, first off, you're probably paying too much. Secondly, it's probably church targeted and probably has features you're not using, so pay attention to that. If you're not using the features and there's a business targeted one that you can go for that has the features you would use, then save yourself some money. Now, with all that said, and we'll talk about this in a future show, you might know that I'm a huge fan of WordPress. WordPress is always updating. It's got a huge community behind it. There's tons of plugins to expand what it can do, and it can live on virtually any web host except for these few proprietary ones. So you really have a lot more flexibility, and almost any web host will have a WordPress import and export. So that's something else for you to consider, is you have a lot more flexibility. So I'll go into that on a future show, but I just want you to remember that content and design should be separate. The export should be easy. Design should be lockable. There shouldn't be page limits. It should have a responsive design. If it costs more, it should give you more, and you should compare the business targeted systems with the church targeted systems and see which you actually need, not which they claim you need. If you do all those things, then I think your web page will be a tool that will help you go out and change eternity. Until next time, I'm Paul Allen Clifford with Trinity Digital Media. www.clifford.com.